The F-47 is shaping up to be more than just another fighter jet. It represents a shift in how air dominance is imagined for the future, not as a single aircraft built to outrun every threat, but as a system designed to outthink, outlast, and outmaneuver an increasingly connected battlespace. At its center is a propulsion concept that may be just as important as the airframe itself, a next-generation adaptive engine built to give the jet multiple personalities in one machine. In the air, speed has always mattered. But the future belongs to flexibility. That is where the F-47's engine story becomes compelling. Instead of running in one fixed mode, the next-gen adaptive cycle engine is designed to change its behavior depending on the mission, the altitude, the threat, and the fuel state. It can prioritize efficiency when the aircraft is cruising far from danger, then shift toward higher thrust and greater responsiveness when the fight becomes immediate and unforgiving. This is not just an upgrade in raw power. It is an upgrade in judgment. Traditional fighter engines are built around a narrower set of compromises, but the adaptive engine concept aims to widen the envelope. More air management, better thermal control, and smarter performance tuning could allow the F-47 to travel farther, stay on station longer, and handle the heat generated by advanced sensors and future onboard electronics. In a sixth-generation fighter, propulsion is no longer only about moving the aircraft forward, it is about supporting the entire combat architecture around it. Every great fighter jet in history has had a defining relationship with its power plant. The F-15 was built around the promise of the F-100 turbofan. The F-22 became inseparable from the F-119, an engine so central to its identity that pilots still talk about the shove of raw thrust as if describing a personality trait. The F-47 was supposed to follow that same arc, airframe and engine, born together, bonded from the first rivet. Instead, it's growing up with a stand-in. The jet is on schedule for a first flight in 2028. Its real engine, the one actually designed for it, the one meant to define what a sixth-generation fighter feels like in the hands of a pilot, won't be ready for integration until 2030 at the earliest. 2 years. In fighter development, 2 years is an eternity measured in flight test hours and software builds, and the quiet arguments happening right now inside the Air Force's Propulsion Directorate about whether that gap can be closed at all. This is the real story of the F-47. Not a triumphant unveiling. A race against its own ambition. To understand why the engine is taking longer than the airframe, you have to understand what it's actually trying to do, because this isn't an incremental upgrade over the engines flying today. It's a different category of machine entirely. Picture a conventional fighter engine as a single-purpose athlete, built to sprint, and only to sprint. Every design choice sacrifices something else in favor of raw thrust. Now picture an engine that can reconfigure its own internal architecture mid-flight, tightening down into a lean, fuel-sipping cruise mode for a 1,000-mile transit over the Pacific, then, in the same flight, folding itself back open into a high-thrust configuration the instant a fight begins. That's the promise of an adaptive cycle engine, and it's the single hardest problem in modern aerospace propulsion. 2 American companies are racing to solve it in parallel, using 2 different philosophies. Pratt and Whitney's entry, the XA-103, is being built almost entirely inside a computer before a single physical part is bent. The company describes it as one continuous digital model, a virtual engine that lives, breathes, and fails in simulation thousands of times before its real metal counterpart is ever bolted to a test stand. It's a bet that catching flaws in code is faster and cheaper than catching them on a test range, and it's a bet the company has been advertising with unusually cinematic confidence, including a video that leaked a glimpse of what might be the F-47's true silhouette, twin engines, inlets tucked low and hidden on the belly of the aircraft. General Electric's answer, the XA-102, comes from the opposite direction, decades of turbine hardware experience, brought forward into an adaptive cycle format the company has already flight tested in earlier prototypes. Where Pratt leans into digital-first design, GE leans into inherited discipline, a lineage that stretches back through generations of fighter engines that never failed the pilot in combat. Both companies cleared their assembly readiness reviews in the spring of 2026. Both are now building real, physical prototypes. Somewhere in the early 2030s, the Air Force will choose one, or possibly split the difference, the way it has before, and let both engines fly in different aircraft. Here is the part of the story that rarely gets told with any honesty. Sometimes the bravest thing an aircraft program can do is take off anyway. The Air Force has confirmed it. The first F-47 will very likely fly in 2028 wearing an engine that was never meant to be its final heart. Officials have discussed the possibility of borrowing power plants already proven in combat, the F-135 that powers the F-35, or the F-119 that has carried the F-22 through 3 decades of service, just to get the airframe into the sky. Not because the jet isn't ready. Because its own future engine isn't ready yet, and there's no reason to let a stealth airframe, flight control software, and structural design sit idle waiting for a propulsion system that's still years from maturity. It's an unusual position for the most advanced fighter program in American history to be in, confident about the wings, uncertain about the heart. But it's not without precedent. Fighter jets have flown with interim engines before and gone on to become icons anyway. The difference this time is the scale of what the final engine is supposed to deliver, and how much of the aircraft's entire operational concept depends on it actually arriving. It would be easy to treat this as a footnote, a scheduling hiccup in an otherwise triumphant program. It isn't. The adaptive engine isn't a component bolted onto the F-47's mission. It is the mission. The F-47 isn't meant to be judged purely on speed or stealth. Its defining role is as a quarterback, a single crewed aircraft directing a swarm of semi-autonomous drone wingmen, so-called collaborative combat aircraft, deep into contested airspace. The Air Force has signaled plans to field over 1,000 of these drones, roughly 2 for every F-47 built, with the manned jet coordinating their sensors, their strikes, their survival, from a cockpit that has to survive long enough in hostile airspace to see the mission through. That kind of mission profile demands 2 things a conventional engine simply cannot give: the range to project power across the vast distances of the Pacific Theater, and the thermal capacity to run the sensors, processors, and electronic warfare systems that make the quarterback role possible in the first place. An adaptive cycle engine isn't a nice-to-have for that mission. It's the only kind of engine that can plausibly deliver both extremes, economy and violence, inside a single sortie. Which is exactly why the Air Force isn't panicking about the delay, and exactly why it should matter to anyone watching. Getting this engine wrong, or rushing it, would mean building the most expensive fighter jet quarterback in history and handing it a set of lungs too small for the game it's supposed to run. Nearly every part of this story is a first. First 6th-generation fighter to reach a construction hangar. First fighter engine designed primarily inside a digital model before it exists in metal. First American combat aircraft explicitly designed from the ground up to command a fleet of autonomous drones rather than simply fly alongside them. Boeing beat Lockheed Martin, the company that gave America the F-22 and F-35, for the right to build it, ending Lockheed's long run as the default home of American air dominance.